welcome on board, chosen one. Look who finally showed up. You felt it before you even pressed play, didn't you? Something underneath the surface of this day, this week, this quiet stretch of time you have been moving through. Not anxiety exactly, not peace either. Something tighter than both. A kind of hum, like the air around you changed pressure and nobody around you noticed, but you. You noticed. You always notice. That awareness, that almost uncomfortable sharpness behind your eyes right now, that is not a warning sign. That is a signal. The universe does not send that frequency to people who are about to stay small. It sends it to the ones it has already decided on. Here is what you also feel but have not said out loud. You are being watched differently lately. Not with admiration, not yet, not openly, with something that looks almost like casual conversation but carries a different weight underneath. They are talking, and the fact that they are talking tells you everything you need to know about where you are standing right now. They said you were too quiet, too slow, too careful. They called your patience hesitation. They called your silence weakness. They sat in rooms you were not invited to and let the words fall easily, the way people speak when they are certain the subject will never rise high enough to hear them. They looked at your stillness and read it as surrender. Oh, the legend needs to bow, they told themselves. They put a ceiling on you using nothing but their own limited imagination, and they handed you the greatest advantage a rising force can be given. They stopped watching closely. They underestimated you. And yet, here you are. Something changed. Not loudly. It never is. The universe does not announce its moves the way smaller things do. It does not send a press release. It simply shifts the architecture beneath your feet so quietly that you almost miss it, and suddenly the same people who dismissed you are in conversations about you. The same voices that labeled you are now calculating you. That shift did not happen because you screamed for it. It happened because you held the line long enough for reality to catch up with what the universe already knew about you. You are not arriving. You have arrived. The arrival just became visible to those who were not paying attention. Before we go deeper into exactly what is happening and precisely why your restraint right now is the most powerful move on the board, take 5 seconds and hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. That is not a request for engagement. That is you paying this message back into the universe. It is your entrance fee for this briefing. The information ahead is for the ones who are serious. Make that known. Now back to the truth. What really happened is this. They expected a reaction. They built the entire structure of their behavior around getting one from you. The whispered words, the subtle dismissals, the pointed silences when you walk into a room. None of that is random. It is engineered. It is a test with a very specific desired outcome. They want to see you crack the surface. They want to see the fire come out messy and uncontrolled so they can point at it and say, "See, we were right. The rise is not real. The composure was always fragile." What they did not account for is that you already know this. And what the universe arranged, quietly, without announcement, is that you're already this. And what the universe arranged, quietly, was finished being set. This is not just a video. This is a blueprint. It is the truth they hoped you would never fully uncover, the mechanics behind the pressure they are applying, and the reason your calm response is not weakness. It is the sharpest weapon the universe ever handed, a rising force. Every second you stay composed while they wait for the explosion, you are not just surviving the moment. You are building something they cannot touch, a reputation so grounded, so unmoved, so permanently ahead of their reaction that when the full rise becomes undeniable, there will be nothing credible left for them to say. Drop 777 in the comments right now. Not because it is a ritual, not superstition. It is a signal, your signal to the universe that you are locked in, present, and ready to receive what this transmission is actually carrying. If you are truly one of the chosen ones, you already feel that pull to stay until the very last second of this video. That pull is not curiosity. That is recognition. The universe is confirming to you that what comes next belongs to you. We are about to break this down step by step. The hidden reaction, the pressure beneath it, and the precise advantage waiting on the other side of your restraint. Let's begin. The kind of intelligence that makes them recalculate everything. They could not break you, so they tried to define you. Think of a sword wrapped in cloth sitting on a shelf in a room full of people who have never held real steel. They look at the cloth and call it ordinary. They pass it every day without reverence. They tell themselves it is nothing because the edge is not visible, because nothing is cutting, because the room is not bleeding. And so they speak freely. They move carelessly. They make their plans as if the sword will stay wrapped forever. That is precisely the kind of mistake that costs everything, because the sword was never asleep. It was waiting for the right hand and the right moment, and neither of those is determined by the opinions of people standing in the same room. You might wonder why it matters that they are talking about you. Why not simply let them say what they need to say and keep moving forward without noticing? Here is the answer. It matters not because their words carry power, but because their conversations reveal position. When people who once ignored you begin spending time discussing you in rooms you are not in, they are telling you something precise. They are telling you that you have crossed a threshold in their awareness that they cannot uncross. You cannot unknow something that has already registered. And you have registered. They called your lack of reaction indifference. What it actually is intelligence. The kind that reads 10 moves ahead and understands that your public composure forces them to spend their private energy trying to interpret you. Every time you refuse to perform distress, they have to start the calculation over. Composure is not passivity. It is strategic confusion on their side of the board. The universe did not build you for an audience that was too small to understand what it was looking at. It built you for the moment when the full picture becomes unavoidable. That moment is approaching at a pace that those around you have only just begun to sense. They feel the barometric pressure drop. They cannot name why the air is different, but you can. You have always been able to. Intelligence is not loudness. It is the ability to let the wrong people underestimate you long enough for the right moment to arrive fully armed. That is exactly where you are standing right now. The art of staying silent while the world finishes setting itself on fire. Silence is not what you do when you have nothing to say. It is what you do when you understand that speaking would cost you more than it would give you. Picture this, a storm cloud building over open water. Anyone watching from the shore can feel the pressure shift. The temperature drops by degrees. The light goes strange and yellow at the edges. But the storm does not announce itself with a speech. It does not explain its trajectory. It simply builds layer upon layer, mass upon mass, until the sky cannot hold the weight of it anymore, and then everything below understands, all at once, what has been forming overhead. Your silence right now is the building. They are standing on the shore, watching the sky change color, and convincing themselves it is just weather. You might ask yourself whether staying quiet risks being forgotten, whether the ones who shout first claim the territory while the composed ones get written out of the story. The answer is this: the ones who shout first claim attention. The ones who move quietly claim outcomes. Attention is temporary. Outcomes are permanent. History does not celebrate the loudest voice in the room. It records the one who was still standing when the noise stopped. They wanted a response because a response would have given them something to work with. The moment you react emotionally, you hand over the authorship of your own narrative. Your anger becomes their evidence. Your hurt becomes their justification. Your hurt, pulled out of context and passed through rooms you never entered, become the version of you they build their case on. Anger is loud, closure is efficient, and you chose efficiency the moment you decided to hold the line instead of cross it. Think of a river carving its path through stone. The river does not argue with the rock. It does not get frustrated by the resistance. It simply continues, and the stone, regardless of its hardness, regardless of how immovable it appeared, eventually gives way. Not because the river was loud, not because it forced the issue, but because it was consistency. Consistency at depth will always outlast resistance at surface level. The universe arranged for your silence to function as pressure. Every week you stay composed. The pressure builds underground where they cannot measure it but absolutely feel it. By the time they feel threatened, you are already ungovernable. The moment your enemies stop being critics and become observers, they started watching because they expected a collapse. They are still watching because it has not come. Imagine this. A chess player who has spent the entire game waiting for their opponent to make the obvious mistake. They have built their entire strategy around one anticipated move. They are so certain of it that they have already calculated the response. They are already composing the victory in their head. And then the move never arrives. And the longer it does not arrive, the more their certainty begins to erode. They start second-guessing their own read of the board. They start wondering what they missed. They start playing scared. That is not a metaphor for some other situation. That is the exact dynamic unfolding in the lives of the people who expected you to react. They came in as critics. People with a verdict already delivered, a conclusion already written, who simply needed you to cooperate with the story they had assigned you. When you refused to cooperate, they lost the script. Now they are watching. Not with contempt anymore, with something closer to calculation, because they cannot place you, and people who cannot place you cannot control you. You might wonder whether being observed this closely means you are becoming a target rather than a rising force. Here is the distinction. A target is stationary. A rising force is already somewhere else by the time the aim is set. The surveillance they are conducting right now is defensive, not offensive. They are not plotting against you. They are trying to understand what they are dealing with. That is a fundamentally different posture, and it is the posture of people who have already, on some level, begun to concede. Panic is quiet before it is loud. First it looks like attention, then it looks like monitoring. Then it looks like overreaction to things that did not used to register. Watch the way they respond to your smallest moves now compared to 6 months ago. The volume of their reaction has gone up, while the provocation has stayed constant or even decreased. That gap between what you actually did and how intensely they responded is the sound of panic in its early stage. You expose more about yourself by how you react to someone's rise than by anything else. They are exposing everything, and you are simply watching, composed, fully aware that every signal they send is information, and every piece of information is an advantage. The universe just quietly dropped into your hand. Why the universe moved the pieces without telling anyone in the room? Timing is not something you force, it is something you force. It is something you qualify for. Think of a seed underground in winter. Above the surface, nothing is visible. The ground is hard. The temperature is wrong. Anyone walking across that field would tell you it is empty. Dormant. Finished, maybe. They would not be lying exactly. They would simply be reading the surface without access to the root system forming below it, the slow, patient architecture of something that is not reacting to winter, because it already knows spring is a fixed appointment. It does not need permission to grow. It simply needs the conditions to arrive. And the conditions are arriving. The universe does not operate on your enemy's timeline. It does not take their assessment of you into its calculations. It does not adjust your outcome based on the rooms they met in or the words they let fall carelessly when they believed you were too far down to ever hear them from up there. What the universe operates on is readiness, and readiness is something that is built in the silence, in the waiting, in the refusal to detonate prematurely when the pressure of being misread becomes almost unbearable. You might wonder whether patience has a limit, whether there is a point at which holding the line simply becomes waiting indefinitely for something that may not come. Here is the answer. The universe already gave you, the one you felt before you pressed play today. You are not waiting for something to happen. You are waiting for something that is already happening to become visible. Those are two completely different situations. One is hope. The other is timing. What you have right now is timing. Picture this: a skyscraper under construction behind a solid green barrier. The people walking past every day have no idea what is rising behind that wall. They have their theories, they have their doubts. Some of them have stopped glancing at it altogether because nothing visible seems to be changing. And then one morning the barrier comes down and the city has a new skyline, and nobody who walked past doubting gets any credit for the height. The universe moved the pieces quietly because quiet is how permanent moves are made. The loud ones get counted, the quiet ones are already finished by the time anyone realizes a move was made. You are a quiet move. And you are already finished in a way that has not yet become fully visible to the people who need to understand it most. Why they could not buy you, break you, or make you perform on cue. They tried every lever. None of them worked. That is not luck. That is architecture. Imagine this: an iceberg observed from the deck of a ship. What the ship's captain can see is clean and measurable. They can estimate it. They can navigate around the visible portion with reasonable confidence. What defeats them, what has always defeated ships that moved too casually through these waters, is the mass below the waterline, the part that cannot be seen, calculated, or accounted for from the surface. You have always had a portion that they could not access. They tried to measure you by what was visible. They missed everything that mattered. They tried flattery first, the kind designed to make you feel so seen that you would relax your edge. When that did not work, they tried subtle pressure, the social kind, exclusion, recalibration of who was speaking to whom and how warmly. When that did not work, they tried the quiet kind of undermining that dresses itself as concern. None of these are inventive. They are a very old and very tired playbook run by people who have never encountered someone who was simply not available to be moved by any of it. Pressure reveals what is built to last. You lasted. You might ask yourself how to stay uncontrollable without becoming cold, how to hold your ground without hardening in ways that cost you something important. The answer is this: uncontrollable does not mean unreachable. It means ungovernable by fear, by approval, by the need to be understood by people who were never going to understand you anyway. You can be warm and completely unmovable. Those things are not in conflict. The universe built you with both, precisely because it knew what was coming. Composure under pressure is not something you practice. It is something you become, slowly, through every moment you chose not to react, when reaction would have been the easiest available option. By the time they feel threatened, you are already ungovernable. And they feel threatened now. That is why the conversations have changed. That is why the monitoring has intensified. They finally understand that you cannot be steered, and that realization, arriving in them now, is already too late to change what is coming. The turn, when too late, arrives without announcement. There is a moment in every underestimation where the window for correction closes. They have just passed through it. Think of a blade in the forge. For the majority of its making, it looks like nothing recognizable. It is raw material under extreme pressure and heat, formless, unremarkable to anyone who does not understand the process. The people who walked past the forge during those months did not see a blade forming. They saw heat and noise and something that had not yet decided what it was. But the blade was always the outcome. The forge was never the story. It was the preparation. And now the preparation is over. The shape is set. The edge is permanent. What comes next is not the making. It is the use. They are beginning to feel the turn. You can tell because the quality of the conversation about you has changed. It is no longer casual dismissal. It carries something heavier now, something close to regret, close to the feeling of having been on the wrong side of a shift that cannot be reversed. They moved early against someone who was still becoming. And now, the becoming is mostly done. They are calculating what that means for them, and the calculation is not producing comfortable answers. You might wonder whether you should give them a chance to recalibrate now, whether it is worth letting them course correct before the full rise becomes undeniable. Here is the truth without softening. The universe does not hold doors open for people who close theirs deliberately. The recalibration they are attempting now is not growth. It is damage control. It is people who were certain you were standing still, realizing you have been moving the entire time, and now trying to figure out how to appear as though they always knew. You are not required to make that easier for them. Anger is loud. Closure is efficient. What they are experiencing right now is not your revenge. It is simply consequence arriving on its own schedule, at its own pace, in its own undeniable form. The universe does not need you to administer it. It has already been administering itself, quietly, the entire time you were being dismissed. The panic is fully audible now. Not in what they say about you, but in how often they are saying it, in the frequency of the conversations, in the recalculation happening in real time. They cannot get ahead of what is coming, and they know it. The coronation that does not need a ceremony. You do not announce an arrival. You simply are somewhere you were not before. And the room has to adjust. Picture this: a prism introduced into direct light. The prism does not explain itself. It does not argue for its right to refract. It does not ask the light to cooperate. It simply does what it is built to do, and suddenly the entire room is different colors, and everyone in it has to acknowledge that something fundamental has changed about the quality of everything they are seeing. You are not explaining yourself anymore. You're simply being fully what you were built to be, and the room around you is already changing colors. This is what the universe was building toward through every dismissal, every misread, every moment of patience that cost you something real. It was not punishing you with the silence and the waiting. It was compressing you. And compressing is how ordinary pressure becomes extraordinary force. The people who watched the compression and called it failure did not understand what they were witnessing. They saw a chosen one being made and read it as a chosen one being diminished. Those are not the same thing. You are not arriving at power. You have been power this entire time. What has arrived is the visibility of it, the moment where what the universe always knew about you becomes impossible to dispute by the people who spent real effort trying to dispute it. They built their credibility on the bet that you would stay small. That credibility is gone now. They cannot unmake the bet they placed. They cannot unspeak the words they said in rooms they thought were sealed. The architecture of their position was built on an assumption about you that the universe just finished proving wrong in permanent and public terms. Silence was never passive. It was always pressure. And the pressure found its release not in explosion, but in elevation. That is the difference between people who rise through reaction and people who rise through inevitability. Reaction can be countered. Inevitability cannot. You became inevitable in every quiet moment you chose not to flinch, every measured breath you took instead of the detonation they were waiting for. Every day you kept building while they kept talking. The universe does not send signals to people who are about to plateau. The hum you felt before you pressed play today was not anxiety, and it was not coincidence. It was confirmation. You are exactly where the universe placed you, at the edge of the moment where ungovernable meets undeniable, and there is absolutely nothing left for anyone to say about your ceiling. You have none, and now we close this. Not loudly, not emotionally, calmly, completely. You were never an exception. You were an outcome. Everything that was done to you, the dismissals, the quiet rooms, the careful campaigns against your name, every single piece of it was part of the compression that made you what you now are. They did not delay your rise. They funded it, and the universe collected on their behalf without telling them a single thing about the transaction. But what the universe revealed to you tonight was only the first seal. Pinned beneath this video, there is a deeper path waiting for you. Not a book, not a course, not a document. It is a living blueprint that listens to you before it speaks. Before it opens, you will answer a few quiet questions only a chosen one could answer truthfully. And what you receive is shaped, sealed, and breathing only for the soul you are right now. No two chosen ones receive the same path. Yours is already being prepared as you breathe. Tap the pinned comment. The universe is waiting on the other side. If this met you where you are, drop a simple yes in the comments. Share it with someone the universe sent you to reach. If this hit where it was supposed to hit, lock it in.